He said, I want to shadow you for a week. So I said, I'm here, but I'm going to Lahore. She said, I'll come to Lahore. Today, if I look back to my days of HSN, the only thing I remember is Saadi. The money didn't belong to you. Somebody gave it to you. You have to give it to the others.
Assalamu alaikum everybody. My name is Arshad Ahmad. I'm the Vice Chancellor at LUMS University. So this afternoon it is with great pleasure and it's a real privilege, Babar Sahab, to have a conversation with you. I want to thank you very much for inviting me. I thought we could touch on a number of broad topics that are oriented towards the future.
Sure.
And I want to begin with your favorite subject. I think it's your favorite subject, which is about learning. Of course, your autobiography is learning from others. And I wanted to ask you, if you were admitted to LUMS as a student today, what types of subjects would you want to learn? And why would you choose those subjects?
Well, at my school, I went through this Cambridge certificate examination system. This is prior to the O and A levels. We had the senior Cambridge and higher school certificate.
Right.
And there we studied maths, we studied science, we studied history, we studied geography, we studied Urdu, we studied Persian, we studied English literature. So I was quite comfortable with all these subjects. And I would have sort of done the same. I would not have specialized in anything but taken subjects across the schools. Some subjects in the School of Science, mostly from the School of Social Sciences. I wouldn't have taken anything from the business school, but certainly these two schools would have taken up my attention and my studies.
So you emphasize breadth.
Yes, at the lowest level.
When starting out at least. And I guess this is reflected in the core curriculum for the humanities. When Kamran Astar Ali was with us, he, as you know, championed that in a big way. And I think many people are also talking now about a core curriculum across all 5 schools. So would this be in the spirit of how you are thinking?
Yes, I would certainly recommend that, because I think, in one's journey through life, you may have specialized in anything, but you certainly touch upon subjects which may not have been majors in your own school.
Right.
And to make a sort of a complete person, you need that breadth and that width.
It's funny, some parents actually from the day one want their children to become professionals, doctor, lawyer, what have you. And yet this is an opportunity in the formative years to be able to try things that maybe you may think you won't do well in, but they will help you down the road.
Sure.
So did you find that yourself, for example, were you strong in numbers, or did you prefer reading and writing? Aapka dilchaspi kis mein thi?
The most formative years of one's life is at the school, because you spend more time in school than in college.
Right.
And there again you look to your teachers for guidance. And we were very lucky. Our teachers at HSN were not just teachers, they were tutors.
Uh-huh.
They were keen for you to have good manners, to learn, to be able to speak well, to behave properly, and to conduct yourself in a manner that you brought credit to your family, to your school, to your country. The subject that impacted most, which was a very minor in my studies, was Persian.
Persian.
We studied Saadi, and I still remember our teacher, Khan Anwar Sikandar Khan. He told us at that time, he said, you may not like it, but it will have an impact in your later life. Right. And today, if I look back to my days of HSN, the only thing I remember is Saadi.
Wow.
He, again, his book, if you have opportunity to study, his Gulistan, that again was divided into 7 or 8 chapters, which was looking at different aspects of life on how to conduct yourself among elders, how the Sufis behaved, how the rich people behaved, how the poets behaved. So it was a very sort of it had an impact on one's learning, and I often quote Sadi in my talks to people that it brought a bit it certainly changed my life.
So some of these things that stick with us, when we look at the new generation of students we have, increasingly I'm sure you've heard this too, that when you ask them, how would you define educational success? So they will say, a lot of them will say, if I get a good starting salary, if I get this title, if I'm positioned in that company, that is what education gave me. But having talked to you before about this, educational success can mean a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So if you had to encourage students to think about, educational success, what would you advise them?
Well, I would certainly advise them to equip themselves in a manner that they would be respected. People would value their behavior, their conduct, their thinking, their advice, their reaction to how they conduct themselves and how they are valued. It's not valued on the basis of one's knowledge, but it's valued on how you react with people, how people respect you in society. I think those are important elements in your behavior.
So Babar Sahab, as young people, sometimes they would certainly appreciate what you're saying, which I think is more about character and the kind of values that are appreciated over time. Can you talk more about this? Because the importance of character development that can occur when you have finished your college and then you are preparing yourself into the real world, this period of higher learning or in university. What would you say to them in terms of the value-based education? What kind of character traits would you like to see them focus on?
I would say that, as you know, that 4 years that they spend at a college or at a university is only a very small part of their total development, from the age of, say, 5 to the age of 20. They've spent 4 years. That's not enough. A great deal depends on their environment at home also, how their parents value things.
Sure.
And I think not enough emphasis is now today laid on parents' responsibility. They think that they get their kids enrolled in an expensive kindergarten or an expensive school, they've done their duty, and then they go and argue with the teachers about grades and how that kids should be recognized for their ability.
Right.
But they don't think about their own responsibility in giving the kind of guidance and the upbringing that they have to inculcate in their children of good behavior, of not being jealous amongst their own siblings.
Sure.
This is something which I can't thank my parents enough for that. We were 9 I was number 8 in a family of 9.
Right.
So I could see how each of my brothers and sisters were loved and guided by my parents. None of us could ever blame them that your such and such brother or such and such sister was the favorite of the parents. They were very just in their treating us.
Sure.
And I think that carried it on. And when you left college and you were preparing yourself for real life, the important thing was that you don't carry your rank on your shoulder.
Right.
You have to be modest about your achievements, because these things, your real ability will come out when you start working. And I have always emphasized on young men and women who, for instance, work in our own organization, because we've had a few hundred of them coming in, not at one time, but over the years. And I always say that you've got to sort of feel comfortable in your environment.
Right.
You have to enjoy where the place where you have selected to come. And if you are not enjoying yourself, then go somewhere else, because you'll never make it. The best comes out of you when you are enjoying your work.
And
Yes.
being yourself.
Yes, and it's not the salary, it's the environment, the comradeship that you have among your co-workers, how comfortable you are, how well you are able to adjust yourself. Because I keep on emphasizing that it's not a one-man show to be successful in life.
Right.
You have to be a team player. And unless you are a team player, you'll never make it. Because, irrespective of who scores the goal, so long as the team wins.
Right.
Same with cricket, whoever scores a century is fine. But you've got to have good bowlers, good wicketkeeper, good fielders. It all makes, they all contribute towards the success of whatever you're doing.
That was a very important lesson. So I think I'm very, heartened to hear how important it is for, first of all, thinking about your family and the learning and education you get from the mahol, ghar ka mahol jo hota hai, and that stays with you. And you talk about integrity and humility and the kind of traits that I think you yourself have often talked about. I know when you would come to LUMS, sometimes you would go and speak with students. You just go into a classroom, or you would have some informal conversations with people working there or people learning there. And I'm reminded by, there's a famous quote by a Nobel laureate who said that learning is only about what students think and what they do as a result of that. So when you are having these conversations, what are you looking for? What do you sort of notice about people when they chat with you or when you see what they're doing?
What I'm looking for is their presence at LUMS making a difference in their overall well-being and thinking.
Uh-huh.
And I can share a very interesting experience that I've had in the last few days. I got your student affairs to send me a list with emails of all the students that had been funded by my foundation. And there were about over 100 over the years, of which 25 are on the campus today, and about 70 are out in the field, and 5 dropped out of 100 that were funded. And so I sent an email to all the 75. And surprisingly, the first day I got 2 replies. One from UT Austin to say that the question I said, I want to keep in touch with you. I want to celebrate where you are. Tell me when you joined LUMS and when you left and what have you done since. So here was a young man, he said, I came to UT Austin and I've done my PhD and I've just joined Google. The second one was a person who said, I come from a small village in the frontier, and after LUMS I came back home to my province and I joined the provincial service. But I kept on studying and I took my CSP examination and I've been selected. I'm going to go into the foreign service. So, this is so rewarding. Today I got an email from a young lady. She said after LUMS I did my accounting and finance, and I joined Price Waterhouse in England, and I've completed my 5 years. So I've got my British passport, and I cannot thank LUMS and you for what you've done for me. And I come from Lahore. My family, my mother lives in Lahore, and next time I come here and visit. So this is something which, to me, it makes my day, that here is a small effort on my part, where these people who would not even have gone to Karachi, have gone to UT Austin, have gone to England, and this young man from the frontier province has joined the, and there was another person who said, I joined the State Bank, and I tell you, I'm so happy for what I'm doing at State Bank to serve the country.
Wow, wow, full circle.
So it shows that your NOP program has to be sustained, but you've got to sort of make sure that you select the right people. So you've done a good job on that.
Well, I'm actually astounded that after all this time, the NOP is 20 years old.
Yeah.
And you are still picking out emails and staying connected with them.
Yeah. I feel, and no email stays on my telephone unanswered for more than 24 hours.
I can vouch for that. I mean, this is remarkable because, imagine what an email from you would be to any one of them whose lives have been transformed through the journeys they've taken.
No.
And how fulfilling it must be for them as it was for you to keep connected and to really care and look after them. This is fantastic, which sort of is a good segue for me to talk a little bit about leadership, because this is a kind of leadership that I don't think many people talk about, which is to try and help others to succeed. In fact, Babar Sahab, I'm going to remind you, when I first came to LUMS and I met the trustees, so naturally they said, here are some of the goals and aspirations of the university, और आप इसमें क्या करेंगे, इसमें क्या करेंगे. Lekin when I first met you, you said, and I'm going to quote here, you said, how can we make sure that you are going to succeed? That was your first question. It was more of an offering than a question.
Yeah.
So I guess my question to you is, what do good leaders do to help others to succeed?
One thing is, the leader never thinks himself as a leader. He is one of the many.
Right.
And his real success is the people that are around him do a better job than he does. And this is very important for any organization to succeed, that they've got to keep on grooming people, their youngsters, their successors, who should be better than them. And because if one is committed to the success of the institution that you're working in, I mean, you've got to be loyal and committed.
Yes.
to do a good job. And there, individuals don't matter. It's the institution that matters, and you've got to sort of infuse that enthusiasm, that passion in them, that the institution has to live beyond you.
Right.
It should have a kind of a life with no limit. And that can only happen if people work towards developing the institution in a manner that it has minimum of weaknesses.
Makes sense. So if we were to look at the leadership at LUMS, for example, a lot of them are new, as you know. We've got all the deans in place, a new provost, a new vice provost. So what kind of advice would you give to them in thinking about the future for LUMS?
Yeah, I would say that they should spend more time with the faculty and the students, because for them to be in the privileged position of a dean, they have to be the father of their school, to make sure that all the all the elements in that school are working towards serving the students in a manner that they are getting the right kind of learning, and to take up subjects which they enjoy reading, and to make sure that your faculty is committed to teaching what is not in the book.
What would be an example of that?
Well, I mean, by their own conduct, by their own knowledge of what they have studied in the subject other than the textbook itself. And so that people look up to them, that here is an ocean of knowledge. He's not quoting from the book, he's quoting from several books and several things that he has seen or learnt or heard. I was very lucky. We had one such teacher in my life. This was Victor Kiernan. He was professor of history. He was a fellow at Trinity College at Cambridge. Came out to India before, just at the start of the war, and we were lucky that he ended up at Edson College. And I was very lucky because, you know, we were very few students at Edson at that time. There were hardly 15 students to a class,
Right.
so that the teacher had a lot of time to spend with you, and and he was an ocean of knowledge, and that's where I sort of saw what a good teacher was.
Right.
That when he discussed about Walter Scott, he was not. We were reading a book called Antiquary of Walter Scott, but he was talking about Walter Scott other than Antiquary, all the other books that Walter Scott had written. And I visited him in Edinburgh when he was teaching there, and he took me around Edinburgh and showed me where Walter Scott lived and where he had, you know, spent his time, and he wrote the book number 1 and 2 and 3 there. So you need somebody like that who is totally immersed in acquiring knowledge and sharing it with others.
Sure. You, I think, are also implying perhaps some of our deans should teach.
Yes, absolutely.
That would be really getting in touch with the students.
Absolutely. I met, Professor Gerhard Kaplan, you know, who was head of Stanford for a few years, president of Stanford. So I asked him, I said, what new things you brought to Stanford when you were here?
Right.
And he said, I had the senior most professors teach to the junior most class.
Right, I remember that, yes. Gerhard Casper.
Yes, Casper, not Captain, Casper, yes.
Indeed.
You know, I mean, people meeting people like that, you are all the time picking up knowledge and information.
That's fabulous. In fact, Suleiman and myself and other teachers were working with our colleagues over the summer. And one of the exercises we did was to think about a teacher that changed you in some way.
Yeah.
And everyone had to just think about whoever that person was. It could be in kindergarten, it could be in high school, it could be in university. And everybody remembered names of people. And then the thought was that what would it be like if we wrote a thank you letter to them?
Yes.
To acknowledge that kind of leadership, which changes people's lives. And we are privileged to do that at the university.
You know, last night, I get up a few times during the night time, and last night, you know, when I got up, I thought of two of the teachers who made a big difference in my life.
Okay.
One was Sufi Tabassum. He taught us Ghalib at Government College. And the other was Dr. Nazir Ahmad. He never taught me, but he spent a lot of years with me and introduced me to the Sufi poets, though he was a zoologist by background.
Oh, is that right?
So the first thing I did in the morning, I called up Dr. Khalid Hamid Sheikh, who is a retired Vice Chancellor of Punjab University. I said, you go to Government College and find out what it will take to have an endowment in the name of these two teachers, so that one would be a scholarship in the Department of Biology after Dr. Nazir Ahmad, and the other in Persian and Urdu for Sufi Ghulam Mustafa Tabassum. These are the names that have to be kept alive in that institution, because they taught thousands of youngsters. And when our generation disappears, their name will disappear too. So I want their names to be there so long as government college is there.
Fabulous. There was a large-scale study done once. I think it was at Harvard. Some 15,000 undergraduates were interviewed, not surveyed. And one of the number one things that they wanted to do while in university was to spend time with their teachers. Babar Sahab, when I think many people think of you as a teacher, in the true sense of the word of teaching about life, about the things you've been talking about, character, values. There's something very human about the act of teaching. What do you think that is? Is it empathy? Is it some kind of motivation that you spark in another?
I think it's also the attitude of the person who wants to spend time with you. I had a very interesting experience 2 years ago. I was with my granddaughter in Palo Alto, and I got an email from somebody I didn't know. He said, I'm a PhD student at Oxford, and I'm doing a PhD in something to do with aeronautics.
Okay.
And I want to get in touch with you. So I told him that, okay. So he called me up, sent him my telephone number. He said, I want to shadow you for a week. So I said, I'm here, but I'm going to Lahore. So he said, I'll come to Lahore. Right. So I said, why do you want to shadow me? He said, at Oxford, we have a program other than what you are studying, leadership program, where they have picked up 30 students from different colleges to spend a year to learn about leadership.
Right.
And the first thing they've said, you've got to find a mentor that you can go and shadow. And your name has come up, I don't know how, and come and. So I said, fine, I'll be in Lahore. You come on the 1st of October and you can spend 10 days with me. So he came.
I remember that fellow.
And he spent 10 days in my office from 10 to 4 every day. And at the end of the 10 days, I said, did you get anything? He said, I've got everything that I wanted. So, I mean, it made me very, I didn't do anything. He just kept on watching me as to how people were coming to my office, talking to me, discussing. I never asked him to go out because I was going to discuss something which was secret. There was nothing.
Right.
Everything was open. So that was something that I was quite happy to.
That's a really good idea, actually, in how we can also develop our own leaders.
Sure.
In onboarding them, so they get a glimpse of what are the opportunities and challenges that we face. And talking about challenges, Babar Sahab, do you think if you had to name a few challenges for LUMS, because it is a young university after all, and it has come from a small school to a comprehensive university. So if you were to sort of think about some challenges in the next 5 or 10 years, maybe longer.
I think one of the things that you have to inculcate in your students, I've been talking to some of your faculty on this thing. One is their personal conduct, behavior, ethics. That is very important. The other thing that I know every student that spends 4 years at LUMS loves LUMS.
Right.
I mean, I've not heard maybe 1 or 2 of the 1,000 that I may have crossed that they were not happy at LUMS, but everybody loves the environment, the atmosphere, the friends that they make. But one thing that needs to be put across to the students, that if you want this place to really keep on going, you have to give back to this university.
Right. Right.
Because, people like us, Razak, Shahid Hussain, we've not had our children at LUMS. We are doing it because somebody else's child, daughter or son should study and come out well. Now, when we are gone, I don't know who else will step in who doesn't have that kind of passion. And as you know, all private universities in the world are sustained by their alumni.
Yes.
And they have to take on themselves this responsibility of that we, some can give more, some can give less, but they can all join together and persuade each other that this is something, this is a tree that we all enjoyed the benefits of sitting under that tree. Now we've got to make sure that this tree stays healthy and keeps on growing.
Right.
That has to be put in, and I think it is the faculty's responsibility to make sure that they carry that message, that don't do it today, do it tomorrow, but start small. Give $5 a month.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Next time you'll feel it, you'll give $10 a month. And you'll come to a point where you give $1,000 a month. Yes. Start small and see how you enjoy doing it.
Yes, in fact, you also gave the idea of give one day of your work to LUMS.
Yeah, sure.
The equivalent of.
Sure.
Which wouldn't be all that difficult for people if they thought about it.
Yeah. But this has to be driven home because they have not seen their parents do this.
So it's a different mindset.
Yeah, it has. You have to inculcate that spirit of giving.
Right.
And recently I've been reading, listening to Arshad Ahmad, who was one of our great writers here. He died maybe 10 years ago. And the few lectures that I've seen on the YouTube of his, it's only on giving.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He's citing such instances that he said, I went to see somebody who was my elder, and I rented a rickshaw, and the rickshaw said he'll charge me 4.5 rupees. So I arrived at the destination, and I gave him a 5 rupee note, and I said, you can take another, 4 annas and give me the change back. And he said, this person who had come to receive me, he said, why didn't you give the full 5 rupee note?
Right.
He said, the money didn't belong to you. Somebody gave it to you. You have to give it to the others. So, a small thing like that. He said, what you give, it's not yours. Somebody has given it to you to be given to somebody else.
That reminds me of one of your many famous sayings. Giving is not about how big, how deep your pockets are, but how big your heart is. Yeah. It's so true. It's so true. But you've been obviously, been someone who everyone looks up to in terms of what giving really means. And you've given to many organizations, many different groups of people. But somehow LUMS has been on top of your list.
Yeah, because it came at a time when I had more resources, and it needed a lot of resources.
Gee.
It's obvious that LUMS is not what we had thought it would be. It's much bigger, and it's primarily because God has been very kind. If you have the right intention, you'll never run out of money.
Those are wise words. And in fact, I asked you for a challenge, but you presented it as an opportunity where everyone can participate. And it's not the amount, but the attitude and a habit that we should all make in thinking about giving back to an institution that has given us so much. I'll shift to the last kind of thoughts that I think are connected to this very much, in that LUMS is a small piece in a big picture of Pakistan, and everyone is trying to do their part. And you often talk about the importance of LUMS serving Pakistan in solving the challenges of Pakistan. And so when you think about that in the sense of a future for the next generation, what should we focus on in particular in Pakistan that could have a real impact other than what we're already doing?
You know, I think what you're doing a very good job, but you have to inculcate in the students that go out is that you have an obligation of not just looking after yourself. You've got to make sure that Pakistan does well. And it can only do well if you help somebody else. And inculcate the habit of not just giving money, of being sympathetic, helpful to people. You know, walk across and take an elderly person and help her walk across the road. You know, that kind of a spirit of recognizing that, you know, God has given you, you know, limbs that you can walk. Somebody may not have that facility. Help somebody to walk. Hold their hand.
Sure.
I think this is something which has to be driven home, that you can only succeed in life when you have left a good legacy behind.
So Baba Sahab, you know, when we are young, we imagine how the world can be different, right? And in fact, I think it was Picasso who once said that everything you can imagine is real.
Sure.
I don't know if you imagined LUMS to be what it is now.
No, and it's beyond our imagination, because we, as you know, started as a business school and then kept on adding new facilities and new opportunities as our resources developed, and we never thought that our resources would multiply the way they have done, and I totally attribute it to, you know, achhi niyat. You had the right intentions. You didn't want to glorify yourself. You wanted to do something that could be done, and reach out to the people around the world, as you've seen, you know, for advice.
Yes.
Which you are doing today. You know, you've got people from across America to Australia to wherever they are, to tell us how we can improve ourselves. And I can tell you that it is the generosity of those people who have never held back any good suggestion.
Yes.
I mean, I can cite to you this example of Dr. Khalid Aziz. You know, the first time I had the opportunity to meet with him and a cluster of professors from MIT and Harvard. We had a retreat when we were discussing the setting up of the School of Science and Engineering. At the end of the first day, I quietly asked Dr. Khalid, I said, how do I compensate these people? He said, you can't. You cannot afford it.
Right.
We are here because we want to help you. We see the passion in you that you want to do something, and we feel that we lose nothing by guiding you. And I tell you, I mean, you find very few generous people like Khalid Aziz. Even now, he keeps on popping up on everybody's email of us raising issues which are not directly concerned with his own profession.
Absolutely. So Baba Sahab, do you think we can dare to imagine what LUMS might look like down the road?
I think it's up to you and your faculty and your students. All three will make it, not one.
Yes.
And I think you need to empower all these people and to tell them that the future of LUMS is in the classrooms. You know, when we were thinking of this School of Science and Engineering, one of the professors at MIT asked me, he said, what is your ambition? And I said, in years to come, I hope we will have a Nobel laureate. And 5 years ago, Professor Jaffe, who's a professor of physics he spent, he spent a week at LUMS during the advisory board meeting. And he came to me and he said, the Nobel laureate is not going to come from your faculty, it's going to come from your students. So you've got to tell them that the sky is the limit. It's not just confined to the School of Science and Engineering, it's the School of Economics, School of Philosophy, School of History, School of Business. As you see, these days the list of the Nobel laureates are coming who are just across all disciplines.
This is so true. Well, this is a wonderful way to tie up our conversation. We started with students.
Yes.
And we are ending with students. And our hope lies with those students.
Yeah.
And while we've talked about leadership and we've talked about support and the need for giving and how important it is to have trust in each other to build the character of the country, if we can. I'm so heartened to see that always you put learning and students first. And it's such a pleasure, Babar Saab, anytime to spend even a minute with you. It's always gratifying because you talk about those, the real essence and mystery of life, which ends up.
We are very fortunate that you are there to take the baton forward and make it happen.
Thank you, Babar Saab. It's a real pleasure. It's a real privilege for me.
Thank you.
So what do you look for when you select a person for a task?
Passion. I'm not scared of trying out new people. And I would say that 90% of the people have never let me down. But the 10% of the people who have not worked out the way I thought, I blame myself for having selected the wrong person.